make your points clear when the need arises or when it concerns a particular issue. Yeah, but after that, I mean, life continues.
And when you've differed in opinion, maybe in a meeting situation, how have you resolved,
For me,
the divergence of views?
For me, I am the person who expresses myself, and other people are free to express themselves. And it's up to each and every person, to listen to the other, reflect over it, and if you see that, I mean, I may be wrong, you reach out to the person or you admit that you are wrong. There's no secret about it. We come out clean about the whole thing. If I offend you, I will, find time to apologize. Now, if I am the one who offended you, also it's open. You can come and say, please, that day, we met or you said this, I'm not, pleased about it or that kind of stuff. My own approach to life is open. Yeah.
I remember at the announcement of your appointment, one of them leapt for joy. And when I asked him, why are you celebrating? He said, well, you, like them, are Gambian, and because you're Gambian like them, you'd understand them better.
Yeah.
And he said to me, I'm sure he would recognize the need for ongoing development meaning education. Was he right to think that way? And if he was right, how much development of our priests has there been within the past 12 months under your
I thought everybody knows about it. That was one of the first things. And well, maybe people may think it's as easy as that, but in this day and age, if you want anything done, you have to start early, especially when it has to do with paperwork, correspondence, and so forth. But not to go into the details, we thank God that this past summer, Father Moses has gone to Duquesne to study in the area of theology.
Your alma mater.
Yeah. And then Father John Mendy, who was in Fajikunda, St. Charles, is in Rome. He is in the Gregorian University, and his area of specialization is Catholic social thought. Then I had to work it out also for Father Joe Cabo to go into the second year of his program so that at the end he will graduate with a master's. Otherwise he would have come back.
Oh.
That was the arrangement earlier on. And then he would have gone, to his area of appointment. And Father Emil, of course, who was the Vicar General all these years, I also had to work something out for him with the province of Ireland, and he has gone for his sabbatical, which is like also necessary and important. And I'm happy that he eventually went, and he himself is saying he's benefiting a lot from the program he is doing. So these are like almost up to 4 people who have gone, and it's like just a start. Hopefully, we improve on that.
Now, when you look at the demographics of the Catholic Church in Africa, in the Gambia, and in the West, in America, for instance, where you are a frequent visitor, people who go to church are generally the elderly.
Yeah.
Here, the church is very youthful. Even this session that we are now recording, it's all young people who are doing it.
Yeah. Okay.
So the youth are vital to the life of the diocese. Now, how can the diocese better cater to the needs of our youth?
That's an important point. The contrast is there for all to see, as you said, in the West and here. Even our countries, the future of our countries really lies among the youth and so forth. It's just natural. In the church, yes, we can do better. In fact, towards the end of last year, there's a whole synod for youths in the church. The Holy Father called bishops from around the world. We were represented by bishops from Sierra Leone to go together with representatives of the youth, to spend this time in reflection to see the role of the youths in the church and so forth, how they can be offered like spiritual, pastoral care and guidance, because they need it also. They are at a very critical, stage in life where they are expected or required to make life choices. Now, that has been done. The synod is complete, and thank God in our recently ended Itkabi plenary meeting, the bishop reported. We had a whole day's discussion on the proceedings of the synod and so forth, and it was very impressive. And at the end of our plenary, we released a communique, which I don't want to preempt because you will hear it this Sunday. That communique has been circulated. I asked Father Sonko to the Vicar General to circulate it to the priest, and it will be read, in all the masses. And there we admitted that, we can do more with our youths, and we need to provide more, programs, and perhaps give them the opportunity to realize themselves and also to play their rightful role in the church and in the society. But then also there is this side of it, that with all the difficulties involved, parents, families, pastoral agents and so forth need to be conscious of their role and not shy away from it, because the youths, they have the interest and the zeal. Sometimes that can go overboard, but they need some bit of guidance. That takes a lot of patience. Not everybody can do it, but we hope the youths in our diocese will be well attended to. It's unfortunate that the recently ended World Day Youth Program, we couldn't participate, but I think something is happening in that area, the Office of Youth and so forth. You have the chaplain, Father Ines, assisted by Father Victor, and they are working with, the DYC and so forth. Yeah.
But do you have a direct connection with the youths, or do you relate to them through the Office of the Chaplains?
That's the only way. I will be, superseding or, going...
Well, the last two popes, but the last two popes get to meet the youths at least once. What is it, every 2 years?
2 years. But I've had interaction with the youths. I've celebrated mass for them, at Fajikunda. That's one of another event I was.
Because they would also want to feel your presence.
Then I think there was another one that they had, but I wasn't around in the country. Yeah, I've had interactions with youth.
You talked about your travels, so you've traveled appreciably over the past 12 months, both outside of the country and within the country. Taking some of your overseas travels, of what importance have they been to, the Office of Bishop?
It's just part of the office. The church is a Catholic church. The church is, universal, and we bishops are in communion with one another and with the Pope. So once in a while, you have to, reach out to other bishops in meetings, and you also need to fulfill this obligation of not just living out, but actually portraying or illustrating this communion that exists among bishops and the Pope. And that's why we went for the ad limina. Now, that is when, each bishop goes to Rome to present a report of the past 5 years, and also to meet the bishop, the Pope, and have session with him and raise concerns, and himself also. It allows him, to be informed about the needs of the diocese and all that kind of stuff. And then we have like a mass together. That was done. Then the second one was when I went again to Rome, as is expected, as a newly ordained bishop, with other bishops around the world, to have what they call the Bishop Seminar. And that was a 2 weeks program with other bishops, but they have like resource personnel, cardinals and so forth from different dicasteries who will come and talk on various, areas of concern, topics and so forth, matters affecting the church. So there you have the opportunity of meeting other bishops, learning from them also, sharing. We had group discussions and so forth, the challenges, involved. So these overseas travel are demanding. They can be expensive, but they are also what? Necessary. They're vital.
Interesting.
And after that, I went to Dublin to see the former missionaries who worked here and so forth. Yeah.
That must have been very interesting.
Oh yeah.
At the Ad Limina, you said Bishop presented 5-yearly reports.
Mm-hmm.
You hadn't been in office even for 1 year. So what kind of report did you present?
Well, it was not a made-up report. Let me put it that way. Yeah. It was a report prepared by the outgoing bishop and so forth, and I mean, you are right, I'm new, quite all right, but I was also not completely strange or not uninformed about some of the issues. So that's what I presented or submitted to Rome. It's just it's a general kind of report. Yeah.
And still on travels and coming back home, you've just told me that you've been to all parishes but one, all 20 parishes but one, which means you've been everywhere in the country. What's been your experience, during all this travel?
It's very fulfilling, and it was positive. The reaction of people, their hospitality, generosity, and openness. Everybody. This is like a pride for all of us that we have like a Gambian bishop, our own son, our own, colleague, friend, and there's somebody we can identify with. So it was very positive, and myself also, I learned a lot in different parishes and so forth, and I came also to know people. It will take time. I am interested in, not just sometimes recognizing faces, but knowing people by their name. It makes a difference, when you can call somebody by his or her name. So it was an opportunity for me to perhaps be closer to the people where they are. In Basse, Bansang, Farafenye, Soma and so forth, Daslame, Brikama, and in the greater Banjul area. So it was an enriching experience, and I'm grateful to all the people and parishioners of these places. I can't promise much, but I am ready, to do whatever it takes to respond to some of the needs, and it will take time. Yeah.
Okay. Any surprises in terms of evangelization? Have you been to a place where you thought, well, oh yeah, or you found that the potential for the Catholic Church to grow there is bigger than you imagined? Or maybe you went to some place where you thought, well, the church was bigger than actually what you found on the ground?
Let me begin with the one you say. Their potential is quite all right. Their potentials, like Basse has grown. Basse has grown a lot, and they were.
But should it have grown beyond what is there right now? Because Basse, even when we were little ones, Basse was already up there as the next, major outstation after Banjul and Serekunda.
Well, you know what happened, in between and so forth. That's history now. But
what happened? Just for some of us who might not know what happened.
As you said, Basse was thriving. There were Catholics there. The numerical number was there, and a lot was done by the first bishop, Bishop Maloney. As you know, he translated the catechism into Fula and so forth, and himself speaks and celebrates the Mass in Fula. But unfortunately, after he left, things happened, and then, those who were there opted out of the church and so forth. And then the numbers went down, and Basse sometimes was taken care of from here. People used to go like a priest for weekend ministry and back. That also had some bit of, effect, downside effect. But at a point also, Basse was given the attention it deserves, and priests were assigned there. And that, I think, helped to build up the church again. Now, the town itself has expanded. There are so many Christians settling and living there, so the numbers have come back again in the church. Not in Mansajang, but in Basse Town itself. And I'm sure that church is like small now, relatively. When I went for the confirmation, many people were outside. Then you come to Fulabantang. Fulabantang also was a parish of its own, then it closed up to now. But now, you know, the town has come back alive again. The school is there. They have a clinic. So that's another area or potential area that, you know, can grow in the future. And if it does, obviously, it can become a parish of its own. Then you have outstations around that Bansang parish and so forth. Now, here in the Greater Banjul area, if we have our way, you know, you can have more parishes. As you know, St. Teresa's, Bakote, the churches can't take the numbers.
True.
Yeah, even if you have more mass on Sunday, they'll still be full. And sometimes people find themselves outside, you know, when they come in late, or even when they don't come late because the church is full.
True.
So the Catholic faith is growing, the church is growing, the diocese is growing. Let's just hope and pray that it will continue in that trend, and we will also work out something, you know, to match this development.
Before we began this recording, we were just chatting at some of the challenges facing the diocese, and inevitably we had to touch on the economic challenges.
Yeah.
How has the global economic downturn affected the diocese?
Well, that's a long problem, a long-standing problem that goes back to, I think, 2007, 2008, when you had this, you know, global meltdown, you know, the crash and all that kind of stuff. And then it affected the investments. They used to invest in, I think, bonds. Yeah, that is not
treasury
bonds, bills. Yeah. Then also, it became difficult that I think most of the accounts that they had to close and all that kind of thing. So it affected the diocese since then, and we have not come out of it yet. We have not come out of it. It's an area that will require a lot of, you know, joint common effort to see how we can invest in our properties and have like income generating projects that are sustainable, that will enable, you know, the diocese to run on its own, or at least have what it takes, you know, to fulfill our mission here in the diocese.
And despite the diocese itself feeling the pinch of the economic downturn, one is tempted to ask, how is it the diocese that is helping parishioners affected by the economic downturn?
You mean the diocese
Yes,
itself?
yes.
Yeah.
You know, when we were young, we used to look up to the church for most of our needs.
Our resources are limited. Our resources are very limited. We are barely struggling, you know, to
keep heads above water.
Yeah, and that's why there are certain things that cannot be provided. In the area of transport, for instance, you have parishes that need good vehicles for effective ministry. They don't have it. What we have, as you know, is second-hand vehicles. That we are even spending a lot of money in maintaining those vehicles. There are some rectories and churches that need repairs, but, you know, they present a budget, we cannot meet up to the budget. So these are the constraints that we are struggling with. But then you can't cry about it. You don't go crying or talking about it in public. We just need to work out something, and hope that over time it will bear fruit and it will sustain us.
From your experience, Bishop, is the Catholic Church playing a bigger or smaller role in the lives of people?
It is playing a bigger role.
How?
Than in the past, because the church is more involved in other activities as well, apart from just, you know, evangelization, and even apart from just like education, which we have been involved in so many ways. Now, there's this consciousness that we are part of the society, or the members of the church are part of the society, and they have a role to play. And it's in fact required of them, to be involved. So the church is trying to be involved in that area also, raising this awareness and consciousness, encouraging its members to be involved in civic public life. The church is also involved in other social and developmental, activities as well that directly impact, the life of its members and also non-members as well. So I don't think we are in that time when, it was just the business of the church, to proclaim the gospel and to encourage people to attend mass and so forth. The church is now realizing, or it has realized, that part of its mission also is to empower people, to enable them to live a very good and fulfilling life without any fear, without any restrictions and so forth. So it is in that light I'm saying that perhaps the church is playing a more bigger role in the lives of individuals now and in the society as well.
Last year when we had a discussion, a similar discussion like we are having now, I asked you how seriously you took Muslim-Christian or Christian-Muslim relations, and you told me that you took them very seriously. What have you done in the last 12 months to prove your belief that Christians, Muslims need to continue these historic ties that we have, and you will defend the smooth relations between the two main religions of this country?
Well, there is nothing I can say specific that I've done, but I also, in my own way, I would say I am the type of person who believes that here in the Gambia, our own situation, is unique, and we need to be grateful for it and try also, to maintain and foster that unity and understanding that has taken place. Now, there are certain things that have happened over the years that could easily have dragged me inside, whereby you can come and perhaps address this issue. But I decided, to be a bit patient and perhaps to give some benefit of the doubt and allow us to perhaps use a better forum or means of communication that would address these kinds of problems. We wouldn't want to be in a situation where we start something that will result to something else and create misunderstanding amongst ourselves. I hope you know what I'm talking about. Yes, yeah. But, so we need to be careful. We need to be careful sometimes in the statements we make and our own response to certain situations, and hope that others also will understand that it doesn't mean, indifference or that kind of stuff.
Have you kept the tradition of the Bishop of Banjul sending greetings to the Imam Ratib of Banjul, the Bishop of Banjul and the Imam Ratib of Banjul occasionally meeting, as was the case with your two predecessors?
It's just 1 year I'm in, and the time I was to do it, I wasn't in the country, I must admit. The time, it was like something we planned, but I was out of the country. So I think that was around the Tobaski's time. Yeah, I couldn't do it, but I hope to do it in the years to come when I'm around. Yeah.
What are some of the challenges ahead?
Challenges ahead are huge. You mentioned about this economic situation we're in. That is not an easy thing to solve. We need to find a way out to address our financial needs. The challenges ahead also involve personnel, training them, and perhaps more vocations because people are aging. At some point, you don't expect somebody in his late 60s and so forth to be running big parishes like St. Teresa's and so forth. So we have a lot of difficulties in there in terms of personnel and the work that needs to be done, because a lot is there to do. We can have like priest presence in schools as we used to have before, but we don't have it. We don't have the personnel. The other challenges also would be like to find the means and so forth of better transport, for parishes and for priests, so that they can do their work well. We also need to perhaps find time and work out maybe the diocese's own goals, in the next 5 years. But that, is a gradual process. I know people are talking about it, but it's one thing to call for an assembly today and we repeat or perhaps say the things that were said before and we all scatter. But it's another thing, to call for a meeting, and then ensure that whatever is decided, is implemented. And after some time, we evaluate it and see that this is, working. So those are all possibilities and things that will be done when the time comes. I cannot, just from my mind, tell you everything that is going to happen in the next 2 or 3 years to come, but those are the few areas that I just consider.
And finally, and on a personal note, are you still able to practice your sport, to keep fit and read as many books as you used to do in the past?
Well, I could not for this past year, but I've not given up. I feel within myself that these are things that I have to do, and I will have to resort to them again or resume my sports and also keep abreast with my own field or area of study. Yeah, but for the past year, no, or even more, like a year and a half, I've not been doing exercise now, which is not good.
Yeah. It's not showing on you, Bishop Gabriel Mendy. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Once again, congratulations. We were talking to the Right Reverend Gabriel Mendy, CSSP, Bishop of Banjul. 1 year in office on Sunday, and he will be celebrating by offering Mass at the Cathedral of Our Lady of the Assumption at 10 a.m. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. See you next year.
Thank you, Peter. And thanks to GPI for the Lopez and his staff. Thank you. Well, I hope
actually,
wonderful.
You could have gone live. Did you go live?
We were watching it live.
Oh,
there you go. There you go.
Sorry for sometimes the